You see it everywhere, right? The sleek machines, the celebrity endorsements, the packed classes. But what if I told you the real story of Pilates didn't start in some trendy LA studio, but in an internment camp during World War I? Yeah, today we're diving into the absolutely incredible journey of a fitness method and the fascinating man who invented it.
This is a quote from the man himself, Joseph Pilates. Now, that's a pretty bold thing to say, isn't it? It sounds a little bit arrogant, but as we're about to see, he might have actually been selling himself short.
He wasn't kidding. Today, over 10 million people in the US alone practice his method. Think about that. Decades before anyone was even talking about core strength or mindful movement, this guy saw the future. So, the big question is, how did he get it so right?
To a lot of us, Pilates feels like it just exploded onto the scene in the last decade or two. It went from this kind of niche workout for the elite, dancers and celebrities, to something you can find in pretty much any gym in any town. A classic overnight success that was about a century in the making.
Okay, so this is the real puzzle we're going to unpack. To understand this global fitness craze, you first have to understand the man behind it all. A man whose life was just as dynamic and, frankly, as resilient as the very exercises he invented.
So, let's meet him. Joseph Pilates. His journey was shaped by huge world events and this just unwavering belief in his system, which, by the way, he originally called controlology. Pretty cool name, right? It's the art of using your mind to control your muscles. And just look at how eventful his early life was. He moves to England, starts teaching self-defense to Scotland Yard detectives, then boom, World War I breaks out, and because he's a German national, he gets interned. But it's in this camp that his method really starts to take shape. He even made this incredible claim that during the deadly 1918 flu pandemic, none of the people he trained died. After the war, he was asked to train the new German army. He said no and headed for America instead.
And this right here, this is the light bulb moment. This is where the famous Pilates equipment was basically born. Stuck in that camp, he got super creative. He started rigging springs to hospital beds so that even bedridden patients could exercise using resistance. This was the direct ancestor of the reformer machine you see in every studio today. Amazing! So, it's 1926. Joe and his wife-to-be, Clara, land in the United States and open up a fitness studio in New York City. But this wasn't just any old studio. Where they set up shop, well, that was everything.
Get this, they opened their studio in the exact same building as the New York City Ballet. Talk about a stroke of genius. Dancers, who need that peak physical control more than anyone, became his first and most devoted followers. The legendary choreographer George Balanchine, he didn't just go to Joe's himself, he sent his ballerinas there too. And pretty soon, dancers were just talking about doing a Pilates without even realizing it was named after a person.
But, for the method to actually outlive the man, it needed people to carry the torch forward. And this is where the first generation of instructors comes into the story. The students who would make sure his legacy didn't just disappear. And one of the very first was a woman named Carola Trier, who had a backstory just as remarkable as Joe's. Before she ever met him, she was actually a performing contortionist.
I mean, her story is just incredible. After escaping a Nazi holding camp in France, a career-ending injury led her straight to Joe Pilates in 1940. He didn't just help her recover, he actually encouraged her to open one of the very first Pilates studios. She became a lifelong friend to him and Clara.
But as you can imagine, not everyone who learned from Joe had that same deep sense of loyalty. And, well, Joe Pilates was fiercely protective of his life's work. So, this one guy, a former hockey player named Bob Seed, opens his own studio and tries to poach clients by opening his doors super early in the morning. And let's just say, Joe was not happy about it. So, the story goes that Joe paid this guy a little visit. But it wasn't for a friendly chat. He showed up with a gun in his hand, and he warned Seed to get out of town. This just shows you how personally he took his creation.
And yeah, the message was received loud and clear. Bob Seed packed his bags and left town. It's a wild story, but it really shows you just how much this method meant to him.
Now, that fierce protectiveness might explain this next little fact, which is kind of mind-blowing. Despite teaching for decades and having hundreds, maybe thousands of students, Joe Pilates is believed to have only ever officially certified 2 people to teach his method. Just 2. And here they are, Kathy Grant and Lolita San Miguel. In 1967, right before he died,
They were awarded degrees by the State University of New York to teach Pilates, making them the only two people to ever get that official stamp of approval directly from him.
But then, a huge problem. When Joseph Pilates died in 1967 at 87 years old, he left no will. There was no formal plan, no designated successor, no instructions on how to carry on his life's work.
So you have to wonder, right? With no business plan and no chosen heir, his entire method could have just faded into obscurity. So how in the world did it survive to become the global force it is today?
Well, the answer really lies with his most dedicated students, these torchbearers. His wife Clara kept the original studio running. Students like Romana Krzyzanowska stepped up to become its director. And, this is crucial, Ron Fletcher took the method to Los Angeles, where Hollywood stars discovered it. And others opened studios all across the country, each one becoming like a little flame, keeping the work alive.
And that was the spark that lit the fire. That Hollywood connection in the 70s brought a ton of media attention in the 80s. The public finally started to take notice, and the business just exploded, launching Pilates straight into the fitness mainstream where it is today.
Which brings us all the way back to this quote. He wasn't just 50 years ahead of his time. You could argue he was closer to 70 or even 80. His prediction, which must have sounded so wild back then, turned out to be absolutely true. So it makes you think, how does one person's vision, left with no formal plan, become a global phenomenon? The story of Pilates really shows us that a legacy isn't always built by some master plan. Sometimes it's built by the pure passion of the people whose lives were changed by an idea. And that's a powerful reminder that a truly great vision can take on a life of its own.